Imagine standing atop the temple of the giant jaguar. The year is 860 AD. The air is thick, suffocating, and smells of wood smoke and dying crops. For decades, the rains have failed. Below you, the great plaza of Tikal is in chaos. The crowd is screaming, demanding answers from their god-king. In our timeline, this is the beginning of the end. The kings are overthrown, the grand palaces are abandoned, and the jungle slowly swallows a civilization of millions. But not this time. Instead of panic, there is calculation. Imagine the Maya elite doing something radical. They do not flee. Instead, they pivot. Using their advanced knowledge of geometry and hydrology, they mobilize thousands of workers to build massive, paved reservoirs lined with quartz and zeolite, nature's own water filters. They abandon the destructive slash-and-burn farming and carve deep, terraced fields into the hillsides, fed by a network of controlled canals. They adapt. They survive. And by doing so, they change the fate of the human race. As the centuries roll on, the Maya cities do not decay. They expand. Tikal, Köpen, and Palenque grow toward each other, connected by paved white highways called Sacbiob. By the year 1100, while Europe is fractured and crawling through the Dark Ages, Mesoamerica is home to a unified, highly urbanized empire of 50 million people. And with stability comes an intellectual explosion. You see, the Maya were already centuries ahead of the rest of the world. They understood the concept of zero when Europeans were still struggling with clunky Roman numerals. They possessed a calendar more accurate than the Gregorian one we use today. Now, imagine that mathematical genius unleashed without a dark age to interrupt it. Without the collapse, Maya astronomers don't just observe the sky, they master it. They build massive stone observatories with polished obsidian mirrors, mapping the movements of Venus, Mars, and the stars with terrifying precision. It is not long before they realize the Earth is a sphere, orbiting the Sun. Imagine a scientific revolution happening in the jungles of Guatemala, 400 years before Galileo. But science needs a medium. In our world, the Spanish conquistadors burned thousands of Maya bark paper books, leaving only 4 precious codices behind. But in this alternate timeline, those libraries thrive. Millions of books are preserved, detailing medicine, history, philosophy, and mathematics. The Maya language becomes the global language of science. And then, the world gets smaller. As their population grows, the Maya look to the seas. They construct massive, ocean-going canoes made of cedar, powered by sails, navigating the treacherous Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico. They establish trade routes with the Mississippian cultures to the north and the emerging Inca to the south. The Americas are no longer isolated pockets of culture. They are a massive, interconnected web of trade, ideas, and shared technology. Which brings us to the ultimate, inevitable collision. The year is 1519. Imagine you are a Spanish sailor aboard one of Hernan Cortez's ships. You have spent months crossing the dark, empty Atlantic, expecting to find a wild, untamed wilderness. But as the fog clears off the coast of the Yucatan, your jaw drops. There are no primitive huts. Instead, the coastline is dominated by a sprawling, white stone metropolis. Giant, stepped pyramids tower into the clouds, their red paint gleaming in the midday sun. The harbor is packed with hundreds of massive merchant ships, flying banners of jade and feathers. Before your galleons can even drop anchor, you are surrounded by a disciplined, heavily armed Maya naval patrol. The conquistadors are not seen as gods. They are seen as trespassers. What happens next is not a conquest, it is a slaughter. But not the one you think. The Spanish find their steel swords and clumsy arquebuses are no match for an empire that outnumbers them 1,000 to 1. Maya warriors, armored in hardened cotton that can stop a crossbow bolt, utilize tactical guerrilla warfare perfected over centuries. The Spanish invasion force is instantly crushed. But what about the invisible killer? What about smallpox? In our history, European diseases wiped out up to 90% of the indigenous population. But in this timeline, the dominoes fall differently. Because the Maya never collapsed, their trade networks with North and South America have been active for centuries. This constant movement of people means immunities have slowly, naturally built up over time. Furthermore, Maya medicine, heavily focused on hygiene, herbal antiseptics, and isolation protocols is far superior to the bloodletting practices of 16th century Europe. They quarantine the sick. They survive the plague. And the balance of power shifts forever. The failed Spanish invasion sends shockwaves through Europe. The Americas are not a treasure chest to be plundered, they are a formidable rival. A Cold War begins. European monarchs realize they must treat the Maya Empire as an equal. Ships from Spain, England, and the Maya trade ports cross the Atlantic, exchanging iron and horses for chocolate, advanced astronomical charts, and rubber. By the 19th century, the global map is unrecognizable. Picture a modern world where the Industrial Revolution was co-authored by Mesoamerica. Imagine steam-powered engines chugging along the ancient white highways of the Yucatan. Imagine the global financial system anchored not just in London or New York, but in the bustling markets of Tikal. Today, the towering pyramids would not be silent ruins reclaimed by the jungle. They would be the beating hearts of hypermodern, eco-friendly metropolises. The Maya civilization would have pioneered a unique form of urban planning, cities integrated seamlessly with nature, powered by solar technology that honors the sun god, Kinichahau. We will never know the full extent of the wisdom lost when the Maya cities fell. But by looking at what they left behind, we can glimpse a breathtaking alternate world. A world where the ancient past did not die, but paved the way to the future. If you could visit this alternate Maya empire, what is the first thing you would want to see? The massive libraries, or the stargazing temples? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to keep exploring the infinite paths of history and myth, hit that subscribe button. The journey is just beginning.